Well, happy Sunday. Y'all just so excited about the warm weather. Anybody else? Like, I am just so grateful. Like, you should never take for granted when we get sunshine here in Ohio. And so I just want to welcome you. If you're new today, we're excited to have you here at X Church. Or maybe you came last week for Easter and just decided you'd try it again and come back. We're glad you're here. I also want to take a moment and just celebrate that we had nearly 90 people make a decision to step into faith, get on the path to God last week. And so maybe you're one of them that's here again. We're excited that you're here. One of the things that you should know about our rhythm here at X Church is on Sundays, we often kind of take a group of weeks or sometimes even months, and we focus on one particular theme so that we can kind of unpack what Scripture has to say about God and about ourselves and about life and how to kind of fit it and change our life around what God tells us about life. We call them series. And it's where we just take several weeks to focus on one concept or theme. And so that's kind of what our rhythm is. So if you're new, that's what we do. And today, we're gonna begin a brand new conversation talking about what it means to be truly happy. And this is gonna be a little bit of a longer conversation. I'm gonna talk about why that is in just a moment. But here's what I know for myself, my own journey in life, and that is so many of the things that I do is all part of this picture that I have of what it means to be happy, what it means for Tim to be truly happy. And I imagine you maybe even have a picture like that. In fact, as we begin this series, I'd love for you to just kind of imagine it with me. And so if you don't mind, even right now in this moment, just close your eyes, just for a quick moment. We're not gonna pray. You just close your eyes. I want you to picture, I want you to get a mental image in your head right now of what it looks like for you to have the perfect life. What is you happy right now? I just want you to picture, what does it look like? What does it feel like? Maybe some of you picture yourself seated on a beach instead of sitting in church right now. And you've got a warm breeze blowing on your face and you can smell the salty air. Others of you might be camped out on a mountain somewhere. Or maybe you're just picturing the job you always wanted or dreamed about. Or the family and kind of seeing your kids play and run around the field. Get this mental image of the perfect happy life. All right, you got it? Okay, hold on to it. Hold on to it for just a moment. Here's what I know. All of us could picture something. When we all think about life, all of us, we imagine what it means to be happy because a lot of us are trying to find it. We just want to be happy in life. And it's like, if I got to get this job one more day, I'm not going to be happy. If we can't get this, if I don't find somebody to settle down with, if we don't get, there's a picture in our life of what it means to be happy. And what I have found is that most of the decisions that I make in life, whether they're small decisions, big decisions, the job decisions, relational decisions, most of them all filter through this ideal. Most of us, when we think about all the choices that we make in life, it's ultimately because we want to be happy. We want to find the path to our happiness. But here's what most of us have figured out. And maybe you're new in life, you're just getting started. Maybe you're just kind of like, I'm just trying to find it. Talk to anybody who's lived life a little bit, and what they'll tell you is that picture seems to elude us. In other words, the reason why you can picture something that's not what you currently have is because all of us spend our lives chasing after something, a mental picture, that if we're quite honest, tends to elude us. And what I've found to be true in my life is that what I tend to experience are what I consider moments of happiness. In other words, there are things in my life where it's like, that felt good, that was really good, I want that again. And what we do is we go from moment to moment to moment in this pursuit of happiness. There are things that bring momentary happiness into my life. Buying new things. Does that make any of you happy? Raise your hand, be honest in the room, right? Yeah, heck yeah, it does. You know what I noticed? Everybody on the floor is honest. Everybody in the risers. Either you don't participate or you are just so holy. I appreciate it. Come teach us. Buying new stuff. You ever notice that buying new stuff makes you feel a certain way? Like you get something new and you're like, oh, Just loved it. Oh, just dying for this, right? Do you know what that is? It's not happiness, it's dopamine. What you're feeling is a neurochemical being released in your brain because you go, oh, I'm gonna be so happy if I get that. But can I just tell you, your brain doesn't care about that item. It just cares about how it felt the moment dopamine released. That's what you care about. Which is why the feeling wears off. Getting a new car, feeling wears off. Getting a new job, feeling wears off. New relationship, feeling wears off. Get a new house, feeling wears off. Why? Because it's the dopamine that actually made you feel happy. And so you got to get it again. We spend our lives going from moment to moment, thing to thing that makes us happy. There's so many things in life that make me happy. Buying new stuff makes me happy, I will agree. It does. Eating ice cream makes me happy. Does it make anybody else happy? I could eat ice cream every day of the week if it didn't make me blow up. Okay, I would. I love it. There's just certain things. There's something about it. I could go on and on. Maybe it's going on vacation, makes you happy. Maybe it's going to work, makes you happy. And there's a bunch of other people who are jealous of you right now, right? Because that's not how you feel when you go to work. What I'm saying is we live life pursuing something that a lot of times it feels like we can't catch. When I talk about being truly happy, which we're going to talk about for the next several weeks, I'm not talking about a moment of feeling something. What I want to talk about is a state of mind. I want to talk about how do we get to a place where, generally speaking, we look at life and we're like, life's good. God's good. Life's good. I'm at peace. I'm happy. You know, and that doesn't mean that there's not trouble, and that doesn't mean you don't have painful things, and it doesn't mean that you don't have situations in your family that are just difficult. But I believe that maybe there's something that we're all chasing, and it's not just a momentary thing, but it is really a state of mind. It's an internal state of your soul to be truly happy. And I think there's an internal desire that we all have for it. You know what's interesting about humans is that this is a shared human desire. Like, it doesn't matter what ethnicity and where you're from in this world and how much money you have or don't have. Here's what I know it's true about all of us as humans. We all just want to be happy. This thing, this ideal I talk about, we all want it. And you know what's interesting is, like, we're the only species that cares about it. Like, you know, I don't think lions lay around most days going, God, I just want to be happy. You know what a lion's thinking? I just want to eat something. Like there's something different about humans, whether you believe God created us or we've evolved, okay? I personally believe that whenever there's a universal desire in all of us, to me, that is an indication that God created it. And so I want you to hear this, because sometimes in the church, we're like, oh, God doesn't care about being happy. I think if we all have this desire, then God put it in there, and I think that there's something really there to it. This is something we all pursuing, we all want. We just don't know how to get it. I love this quote from the great theologian C.S. Lewis. He said this: if I find within myself a desire for something that it seems like nothing in this world can ultimately satisfy, he said the most probable explanation is that I was made for a different world. And I wonder if maybe why there's so much angst, because we're all chasing and pursuing something that Solomon says it's like it slips through our hands, like we can't catch it, is maybe because that thing that we all desire the most was not intended for life the way we experience it here on earth. See, I think there was a time when mankind experienced this kind of bliss with God. I think there was a time before sin. There was a time before there was destruction. There was a time before there was brokenness in our world where we experienced this like perfect tranquility with God. And then sin messed it all up. Never since then, you and I have been in this pursuit of happiness. We just want to feel this way. And I believe that we will one day. Because what it tells me is if you can't find that here in this earth, I believe that one day on the other side of eternity, we will experience that in the presence of God. I think that there's a level of peace and happiness of the soul that we're all chasing that is ultimately found in that experience. However, I also believe that maybe one of the reasons Jesus came to this world is so that we could experience a little bit of heaven now. See, I don't think we have to wait until we're dead to experience it. That's why when Jesus talked about how to pray, he said, pray here on earth as it is in heaven. Jesus was always trying to bring heaven to us. And I believe the primary message that Jesus talked about was how to experience heaven and how to experience true happiness. And so here's what we're gonna do. For the next 10 weeks, yes, you heard me correctly. We normally don't do a series this long, but we are now. For the next 10 weeks, we are going to talk about the primary, the prominent, the most popular message Jesus ever gave. We refer to it as the Sermon on the, do you know what it is? Sermon on the Mount. How many of you have ever read through the Sermon on the Mount? Raise your hand if you have. I imagine a lot of you have. Maybe some of you never have. This will be new for you, but the Sermon on the Mount is found in Matthew chapter 5 through 7. In fact, we're gonna begin there today. And today is just gonna be an introduction. So I'm just gonna be kind of preparing us for where we're gonna go for the next 9 weeks after this. But here's the thing, this famous sermon has the most quoted words of Jesus you will find anywhere in the world. Do you realize how many things, even today, we quote from Jesus and they actually are pulled directly from the Sermon on the Mount? Things like the Lord's Prayer, right? It's prayed by maybe billions around the world, comes straight out of the Sermon on the Mount. Maybe you didn't know that. Things like this. Here's famous phrases Jesus said. Maybe you didn't even know it came from Jesus. He said, if somebody strikes you on the cheek, you should do what? Turn the other right. Did you know that's from Jesus and that's from the Sermon on the Mount? Jesus said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know what that's called? The golden rule. You know who came up with that? Jesus, Sermon on the Mount. Jesus said things like love your enemies. Don't like that part. We might skip over that one when we're working our way through it, so. What we're gonna do that's gonna be a little different, let me just tell you why we're gonna take a little bit of time to walk through these 3 chapters, is that most of the time when we've heard parts of the Sermon on the Mount, or we've heard something preached from the Sermon on the Mount, oftentimes what we do is we cherry pick small, like just portions, and I understand why, because if you read through it, and I would challenge some of you, maybe you don't have a regular rhythm in the Bible, or maybe you do, add reading the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5 through 7, maybe a couple times over this next 10 weeks. But when you do, it almost feels like Jesus is just like spitballing. It's kind of like all over the place. It's like, you've heard it said this, and then let me talk about that, and do not judge, and, store up your treasures. And it's like, what are we doing here? It's like all over the place, but it's really not. What's happened is most of us have heard bits and pieces and we pulled out little things, but sometimes I think we miss the whole of what Matthew gives us when he gives us the structure. And so here's what I want to tell you. In the Notes app, if you have our app, if you don't have it, I download it, okay? X-Church app, log into it. But on the message notes portion under Sunday, I put in there context about the Sermon on the Mount, so that we're not talking about today. I've included the 10-week structure that we're gonna walk through of the passages. And some of them are really long, but it's to help us understand maybe what Matthew was trying to give us from these famous words of Jesus. It's to help us see something a little bit differently. And personally, when I step back from reading through the whole thing, can I just tell you what I see? It seems like the whole entire thing is giving us a foundation for how to live a happy life here on earth. What happiness really looks like. And it's not what most of us think. And so if you have a Bible with you, we're just gonna do the introduction. I kind of consider this, it's also probably maybe the more famous portion of the Sermon on the Mount, but I actually consider this like the introduction in Matthew chapter 5. And so if you wanna follow along with the Notes app, or if you have your own Bible, if you don't have it, we'll put the words up. But Matthew chapter 5, are you ready for 10 weeks? Can you handle it? Okay, we'll see. We'll see if I can keep you for 10 weeks. Matthew chapter 5, let's read just the first couple verses to set the context before we dive into this. It says, now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and he sat down. His disciples came to him and he began to teach them. Now I want to pause for a moment. I want to give just a little bit of context of what we're looking at. Jesus sees this massive crowd of people. Most scholars would say that whenever Jesus was addressing crowds, that there could be thousands in it. And though Jesus kind of did most of his ministry around a small area, region around Galilee, what you may not know is that he was always talking to thousands of new people. One of the things that people would do back in this day is that they would travel from region to region. And whenever they traveled, they always traveled in massive groups. Let me tell you why. It was really dangerous to travel by yourself. Like bandits and robbers and stuff. And so whenever there would be certain times that big groups would go, and sometimes thousands would number because it was safety. Do you remember the story where Jesus' parents lose him traveling home from Jerusalem one time? You're like, how do you lose your son, right? Maybe they had other kids, right? How do you lose them? Because they were traveling with probably 1,000 plus people. And so people would travel in these large groups, and when Jesus looks and he's with his disciples, he sees a crowd of people. And Jesus was always like, his heart was when he would see people and they were hungry and he would see they're broken and they were struggling, he always would minister to them. And so Jesus climbs up on this hillside. It's called the Sermon on the Mount for the very reason that he gets up on this like higher elevated like hill. Now, I think sometimes we think mount, we think like Rocky Mountains. It wasn't like that. It was a little hillside. I've actually been there. I got to stand in the very area where they think Jesus delivered this message. And Jesus, he sits down. Now, why not stand up? I'm standing up. I should have brought a stool. I should have sat down, right? Because this was a rabbinical thing. This is what rabbis would do. They would go, and rabbis would sit down, and everybody would gather around, kind of like why we have elevated platforms so everybody could see. And they would listen to him. And now, I mean, Jesus has a captive audience. Why? Because nobody has screens. Nobody's got Instagram. Everybody's like, there's no news. They're all bored, right? And so whenever a rabbi would talk, everybody would be like, oh, I want to hear this. And so there's this large crowd, and Jesus begins into the Sermon on the Mount. Now, the one thing I want to say before we read into this is the most expansive collection of this talk. But a lot of times I think we hear Sermon on the Mount and we think, oh, this must have been Jesus's like number one message. Like people voted on it and were like, this was his best performance, the way he landed the plane, it was so good. Like, no, that's not what I think this is, okay? Most scholars believe that this was the same message Jesus delivered all the time. One of the reasons why is because Luke chapter 6, you could read this on your own, is a condensed version of the Sermon on the Mount. But guess what it says? It says that Jesus began speaking to a crowd on a flat surface. And so I believe that Jesus, because his crowd changed, this was his main message. And so I don't want you to think of this as like, oh, this was one little piece. I want us to think, if Jesus had one thing to say, if we brought him to X Church to come preach on a Sunday, this is probably what he would share. So, with that, let's dive in to this next section, okay? I want us to do something a little different because I think you all are with me today, and you got this. We're gonna read this section. It's called the Beatitudes, and what I wanna do, we're gonna put up on the screen, I want you to read it out loud with me, okay? I think sometimes when we say something out loud, it connects to something inside, okay? So Matthew 5, it says, he said this, starting with verse 3, say it with me. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Okay, let's pause there. How many have ever heard of the Beatitudes before? Raise your hand. Okay, a lot of you have heard of this little portion. It's a beautiful portion. To me, it's his intro. So he's trying to hook everybody in. And he's talking about what it means to live a blessed life. These are the people who are blessed. Now, the term blessed that we get, now the New Testament is translated into Greek for us, but it's this word makarios. Makarios. And here's what it means. It means to be blessed or to be happy or happier. That's what the word means, okay? So you could reread this whole section like happy. Happy are the meek, right? Happy are those who mourn. Happy are like this is how you could read it. Now, what's so fascinating to me about the way this was given to us and translated is the Greek word makarios comes from a special word that was only reserved for divinity. It's the word makar. And in classical Greek literature, we're talking about outside the Bible even, Homer and all these special like Greek literature, the word makar was never used to describe humans. It was only used to describe gods. It was believed that only gods were makarios, were happy, were blessed. In other words, it was kind of like if you were a god, you live in a state of untouchable bliss. Or it was also assumed that if you were someone like a hero who died, that you would then in the afterlife get to experience this state of bliss. And so it starts off that everybody in this day thinks that if you're makarios, you're either divine or you're deceased, not even human. Now what happened is over time, people began to realize that there were people who had money and they had power and they had status and they were the culturally elites. And everybody would look at them and go, your life is perfect. Your life is untouchable. That must mean what it means to be happy, to be blessed, okay? So this is the environment. And can I just tell you, 2,000 years removed from Greek culture, Roman culture, now in America, guess what? Nothing's changed. We're the same way. Oh, the people that are happy? Not me. It's those people who have more. It's the people who get to drive that car because I wish I could drive that, but I can't drive that. It's the people who live in a house like that. We can't live in a neighborhood. I wish we could live in a neighborhood like that. It's people who get to go on trips like that. I wish we could go on trips. They go on trips like that. It's people who have all that stuff. They have the perfect life. They never have to deal with sickness. They don't have to take medication. They don't have to take pills. They're happy. That's why when I said, how do you imagine yourself happy? Most of us could picture something other than what we have. So this is what's happened, is we think it. Now here's what's fascinating to me. Jesus sits down on a mountainside, and there are thousands of people here. And guess what? None of them are rich. A lot of them are sick and looking for work. Have run out of rations on their trip. They're the lowest of the low. They're the bottom of the barrel. Everybody overlooks them in society. They're not important at all. So this would have been shocking because Jesus kind of flips the script. And he's looking at them. And he says, happy. I love how he talks this, starts off this. And he says, happy are those who mourn because you lost something. So you're blessed. Can I ask you a question? If you've ever lost someone, it doesn't feel very happy, does it? This is so fascinating to me that Jesus would use some of the things that he says, right? He says, happy are the poor in spirit, the humble, the ones who have been humbled because of life. He says, for theirs is the kingdom of God. What? This doesn't make sense, God. He says, happy are the peacemakers. When you're the person in your family drama and you're just trying to keep it up. No, that's not, I don't think that's what they meant. No, they really do love you. No, I'm just trying to keep peace. Isn't that great feeling? Do you feel happy when you're the one who's going in between the family members that are fighting with each other? Yeah. Oh, and he says, happy are you when people persecute you for doing the right thing at work. Doesn't that feel so good? This would have been shocking to them. That Jesus takes and he flips the whole script upside down. And what we get is the beatitudes. These things, these blessings, what it means to be blessed. It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense in my world. Now, here's the thing about these beatitudes, because I was reading through them all, and people have given a lot of different reasons, like, okay, do they walk through a flow, and it's kind of like as you grow, and all these different things. And I think each of them are beautiful. Each one, can I say, is like a beautiful promise. It really is. I mean, to know that it's hard to see that I'm blessed when I'm mourning, but it is beautiful to know that God will comfort me in the middle of it, right? Each one of these, I think, holds itself a beautiful promise, and I think we can hold on to that. I really do. But I also think that it's really hard for me to imagine that this is the picture of happiness. Because when I close my eyes and I imagine Tim happy, it's none of those things. It's not being insulted, it's not being persecuted, it's definitely not mourning. I don't think of myself, it's like, oh, just, it's being meek and it's showing mercy. I don't picture that. And so what are we missing? Whenever you read something in scripture and you go, this just doesn't make sense, I always like to ask the question, okay, God, what am I missing? What am I missing? And as I began to zoom out, okay, as I kind of like tried to take them as a whole, and I tried to say, what are you trying to say? I started to see something. I think sometimes we can pick and choose one of these so somebody's mourning and you can use it to comfort them, and that's wonderful, that's beautiful, and that's great. But I think we're actually missing something that Jesus is trying to show us here. I think that Jesus is trying to say that there are things that we see here on earth, and the things that we see and the way we experience life and how we imagine it, it's not quite what we think. In other words, things are not quite as they seem. It seems like Jesus spent most of his time teaching, most of his ministry, you can go read through the account of his life, constantly trying to help us see that everything that we imagine from this world is actually flipped upside down. I'm gonna show you this in a minute. That everything is actually inverted. That everything we think is so natural is actually upside down. Let me show you this. Even we find this in creation. We find it in our own selves. I don't know if you're familiar with this, and some of you that are familiar with anatomy and how the eye works, you will. But here's the thing. Right now, you're looking at me, okay? You're looking at me, you look at the screen, you watch this online, whatever it is. Okay, but as you're looking at me, here's what I want you to know. This is how you can see me, is that light, we have lights on, lights, when it hits me, it's reflected back to you, the shape and everything, the colors and the way light refracts. It's reflected back into your eye. And as that passes through your lens, you may not know this, but your lens actually flips the image upside down and casts it to the back of your retina. Which means you're looking at me, but let me tell you what your brain sees, because then the signal goes through an optical nerve to your brain. What your brain sees is this. Did you know that? It's true. It's crazy. Like everything you see in this world through your eyes is actually flipped upside down from reality. Your brain actually knows that doesn't look right, and it mentally tells you what you see in front of you is the right side up. It's crazy. Like that our brains do this. And I thought to myself, well, why does that happen? I don't know. I'm sure there's a great physiological explanation for why this happens. And maybe God made it that way on purpose. Maybe he put a little Easter egg in creation so that we would understand the same truth Jesus was trying to say over and over again, which is that what we see here in the earth, on life on earth, is actually inverted from the real reality. Everything you and I see here on earth is actually upside down from the ultimate reality that is found in heaven. Jesus' primary message over and over was to try to help us get what the kingdom of heaven is like. That's why almost every parable starts out, the kingdom of heaven is like. The kingdom of heaven is like. You may have not noticed this, but even in these beatitudes, the first and the last one, The first one and the last one both end by, he says, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I wonder if Jesus is trying to help us see something. You and I, we are living in a stranger world. We're living in an upside down reality. You know what I'm talking about? Stranger Things? That's real. Like everything you think, and then you go through a portal, and then everything is flipped upside down. That's what Jesus was trying to help us see. And that means that everything that you and I think is going to bring us pleasure might actually bring severe disappointment. And all the things that we chase after that we think will make us feel free. Oh, I'm just going to drink myself into this because then I'll feel free. Actually leaves you trapped with an addiction. And all the things that we chase after, we go, oh, this is where happiness is found. This is what must mean to be blessed. Jesus said, no, that's not what God blesses. And all of the things that we're pursuing, because I just want to find happiness because I've got this internal desire that I think God gave me, it's fleeting in this world. In other words, it's here for a moment and then it's gone. And then I need a new dopamine rush so that I can feel it again. And we keep going from thing to thing, person to person, and we can never seem to find it. It's because in this life, it's actually all been flipped upside down. Jesus was constantly trying to teach his disciples this. One time there's a moment where Jesus is walking with his posse. He's with his group, and they're walking along, and he overhears them talking, and I think they were trying to be really quiet. You know, maybe he was lagging behind, and they were ahead, and they're walking around. This is the funniest conversation. It's found in Mark chapter 9. And they're literally, Mark tells us, they're arguing about which one of them is the best. I don't know, Jesus the other day, you remember when he called on me and he wanted me to, I think he thinks I'm the best. I think someday when Jesus is like, when he becomes king or whatever that's gonna look like, I think he's gonna anoint me as right-hand man. Like, I think I'm the best. And I know none of us do this, okay? Especially guys. I know none of us get together and talk about golf and how long we can hit our drive and how we can outdrive everybody else. And none of us get together and talk about how we can beat each other in arm wrestling. And I know guys, we definitely never do this, right? But Jesus is with the disciples. He's walking around and he hears them because they forgot he had supersonic divine hearing. And Jesus, I love this. Let me read this. This is one verse. Mark 9:35. So he sat down and he calls the 12 disciples over to him and he says, whoever wants to be first must take what place? Say it out loud. Woo. And be the what? Servant of everyone else. What is Jesus saying? He said, if you want to be first, you actually have to go last. You want to be the top dog, you got to be the bottom servant. You want to be the person that everybody looks to like, oh, you're so special. You actually need to go wrap a towel around your waist and you need to be a servant and serve other people. Jesus was always trying to show us that everything we're pursuing is flipped upside down in the kingdom of heaven. In fact, that's why they didn't get it right before he was arrested. And Jesus gets together with his disciples. This is a crazy moment. As he gets together, he gets down on his knees. And he's got a water basin and he's got a towel. And he starts washing the mud out from between his disciples' toes. And he gets to Peter, and Peter's like, no. I mean, maybe he had bunions. I don't know what he just didn't want Jesus to see him. I don't know. But literally, he says, oh, no, you're not, this is backwards. This isn't how it goes. I should be cleaning your feet. And Jesus says to Peter, he says, you don't know what you're talking about. One day you will know, but you're not getting it, Peter, because you keep looking at life through an inverted lens. The reason why so many of us, can I just say this sincerely, the reason why so many of us are chasing and pursuing something that we can't seem to find is because we're looking through an inverted lens. Can I give you just, again, this is just the introduction. We're not even getting into this series yet. But if I could just give you what I think Jesus is saying through these beatitudes is a key to happiness. I think he's saying that happiness is received in reverse. Happiness, I know we all want to find it, but happiness, what if it's received in reverse? What do I mean by that? I'm just saying, like, if you want to be happy, Don't make your life all about you. I'll clap. That was so good. I just gonna clap. Y'all didn't. If you want to be happy, don't make yourself the center of attention. Serve others. Isn't that what Jesus said? If you want to be happy, don't. I just want to climb my way to where I'm like the person that everybody respects and I'm in charge and I make the most money. I do that. Jesus said, if you really want to be happy, it's not about that. Actually, just begin to serve other people. Trust God to actually lift you up. If you want to be happy in this life, it's found in reverse. It's a flipped image. It's not me. It's not my own agenda, but I'm going to live to serve God's agenda. And when we live to serve God's agenda, all of a sudden we experience and receive something like a happiness that you can't find on your own as you chase and pursue the wrong things, because the kingdom of heaven is an inverted picture. And it's really important that we get this today as we go on this journey, because when you get into this message, like this sermon of Jesus's, what I'm going to tell you right now is that almost everything that you hear is going to go against the grain of what most of us really believe and how we live. Like, no, I love Jesus. Jesus is great. He always spoke the truth. I know, but what I'm saying is the primary message that Jesus gives is countercultural. It's not popular. You know what I mean? Like when Jesus says, hey, forgive. Well, they didn't ask for forgiveness. I don't care, Jesus would say, in the most loving and polite way, probably better than I did. He would say, if you don't forgive your brother, your heavenly Father won't forgive you. See, there's a lot of us who are like, nah, I can't forgive them because they don't own it, and I won't forgive until then. Okay, I'm just telling you. I'm just warning you. Almost everything that Jesus said. He talked to a group of Jews who were living under Roman oppression, and he said, hey, if somebody makes you carry their sack for 1 mile, now nobody would make us probably do that today, but in that day, Roman soldiers were allowed to find anybody they ran across that was an Israeli and give them their sack, and say, you need to carry this for the next mile. They weren't allowed to go more than that legally, but they were allowed to. And Jesus said, if they make you carry it for 1, offer to go 2. I think I'm good at 1. You know what I mean? Like, what are you talking about? Jesus isn't the one who only says love your neighbor. He was also the one who said in the Sermon on the Mount, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who what are you talking about, Jesus? Like this is what I'm saying. I'm just trying to prepare us. This message is countercultural. Everything Jesus taught was inverted from the way it is in heaven. That's why Jesus said it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. We're like, no, it's better to get than it is to give. And Jesus said, no. See, the only reason why you believe that is because you're looking at life through an inverted lens. That's why some of us struggle with the idea of giving to God the first and the best of our increase in our income. No, I can't give a percentage. I can't give a tithe. I can't do that. That's so risky. I don't know if there'll be enough left over. I don't know if I can. And that's exactly why Jesus tells us that when we put him first and we seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, all these other things. I'm already getting into the Sermon on the Mount. This is just week 1. But what I'm trying to show you is that it's all flipped. It's all flipped upside down. In the last 2 verses of this section that we're going to cover today, I think it's kind of like the ending of just the preface, if I could say it that way. In Matthew 5, verses 11 and 12 says this. He says, blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. I'll be honest, when people say really terrible things about me, and it's happened, and it will happen, and most of the people don't know my side, and most people don't know my intention, and most people don't know that I was just trying to do the right thing, and most people don't know. It's really hard in those kind of moments to feel blessed. And then Jesus says these words in verse 12. He says, rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. I don't find myself blessed in moments like that. I don't feel blessed when I'm mourning. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. You know, it doesn't feel good to give mercy to someone that we feel like doesn't deserve it. I'm just telling you some of the things that Jesus said. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the meek. They'll inherit the earth. Blessed are those who are persecuted. Righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It doesn't make sense. And I almost get the feeling that Jesus would say there's a lot in this life that doesn't make sense. There's a lot that we're chasing after and pursuing that we think is the key to happiness, Makarios, but it doesn't lead you there. And the reason why so much in this life doesn't make sense, and I don't know how in the world I could be blessed when I'm going through trials. You know, James says, consider it pure joy when you go through various trials and tribulations. I don't know how to feel joy over that. I think here's the point that Jesus makes for me. He says, Tim, you often are just looking too temporal. You're just looking at right now. You're looking at the difficult moment. You don't see what I see. Your picture is flipped upside down. What I see is eternal. You know, at the beginning, I asked you to close your eyes and picture the perfect, happy life. There was a reason for that. Because I think a lot of the things that we look at and we see in life that we think will bring happiness, you know why most of us picture a certain lifestyle, we picture a certain place, we picture a certain thing, is because we're looking at those things through the natural eyes. The reason why I had you close your eyes is because maybe the only way to see what is eternal is to stop looking at what is right in front of you. But is to actually understand that God has a reward. Why don't you stand with me today? We're just getting started in this series. And I know there's some of you, as I even talked today about mourning, some of you showed up here today in a state of mourning. Some of you have been living in turmoil and trying to bring peace and having a hard time with it. Some of you look at your life and you go, it doesn't feel like a blessed life or a happy life. We think it's got to be financial or it's got to be this, but I think if Jesus were right in front of you, he would tell you a blessed life is none of those things of themselves, but it's found in me. It's found in my presence. It's found in the kingdom of heaven. When you invite the kingdom of heaven into your life, that's when you begin to experience happiness. That's when you find what it means to be truly blessed. Would you just close your eyes? Maybe we need to close our eyes. Maybe we need to have our eyes closed a little bit more so we can put our sight on God, so that we can look at our situation with faith in a moment like right now. Father, I pray for the person that's here today that maybe does not feel joy. I pray, God, for the person here today that maybe feels like they've been in a state of mourning, that, God, they look at their situation and they say, life has been really unfair, and it just doesn't seem like, God, you're there, and it doesn't seem like I could actually experience joy, and I can have this peace we're talking about. But I want you to hear this today. Wherever the presence of God is, wherever Jesus, his Spirit shows up, that's where there is peace. That's where there is joy. That's where you can experience the fullness of what God has for you. And so, God, as we're here in this place, as we begin to turn our attention and our affection towards you, God, I pray that you would just meet us right now. I pray, God, that you would lift our eyes, that we wouldn't just look to this world. God, I pray that the things of this world would grow strangely dim in light of who you are and the reward that you have for us. And as we set our attention to seek first your kingdom, God, here's what I know. I know, God, that you'll meet us, that you'll give us everything we need, God. And so maybe that's our prayer here today, church. Come on.
Thanks so much for tuning into this message. I hope that it encouraged you and inspired your faith. If God is doing something in your life, would you take a moment and let us know? We want to connect with you and we want to be able to pray for you. All you have to do is shoot us an email to hello@thex.church, or you can always send us a DM on one of our social media platforms. And if you know somebody that would also be encouraged by this very message, why not take a moment and just share it with them right now? And as always, I want to say thank you to every single person who so generously financially supports this ministry so we can continue to get messages like these out to people all over the world. We believe God is building something special and you're a significant part of it. Until next time, have a great day.